I'd like to thank you all for joining into IdeaGen TV today. Today we have a very familiar guest, someone we've had before, Jane Oates, the president at WorkingNation. Hello,
Hi,
Jane.
Will.
How are you doing?
Great. Thanks so much for inviting me back.
It's so great to have you. I guess we'll go ahead and start. We know who you are, but just for the sake of the audience, first-time listeners and viewers, could you go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself and what you do at WorkingNation?
Sure. Well, I'm the president of WorkingNation, and WorkingNation is a nonprofit media entity that was created by Art Bilger to really tell the story of the connection between work and especially the future of work and education. How do you get those good jobs? So we, through video, journalism, podcasts, and live events, many times doing them with IdeaGen, talk about, how does everybody get equal access to a quality job? And how does regardless of your age or your zip code, and how do you make sure that you're as future proof as you can be? Now, I come to this job from decades, which is how I know George, of work in government, both at the executive branch level and the legislative branch. So basically, I'm a policy wonk, Will, and have been for a long time.
That's great to hear, and I'm just going to say it's always a pleasure to collaborate between IdeaGen and WorkingNation. What do you think that the greatest challenges for the future of the American workforce are as a whole?
Not because I'm with WorkingNation, but I think it's communication and information. I think, first of all, people are so, inundated with how things are changing, and they're used to the job titles that they grew up with, regardless of their age. They know certain job titles, and they really aren't as familiar with the jobs in demand that are new. So they haven't heard very much about data analytics. They may have heard some about cybersecurity, but not enough. And even in sectors where they feel they're familiar, for instance, healthcare, the world is changing so much. It's not just about the fabulous doctors and nurses anymore, but there's so many behind the scenes jobs, both at the administrative level and at the patient care level. So I think getting that information out is critically important. And then finally, it's always been the same, but now more than ever, we need to motivate people to believe that there is a really good job for them, every one of them, in this new economy. We just have to make sure they have that pathway.
That's great. And you were mentioning kind of these new jobs that are popping up. Do you, on that note, are there any certain age demographics of any sort that you believe are subject to greater challenges in today's workforce than others?
Look, everybody who is having a difficult time getting the job that they want is somebody that we should concentrate on. But I think if I were to paint a broad brush, I'd say the two extremes are the most stressed right now. Those just entering the workforce, whether from directly from high school, from a 2-year or 4-year degree, or from a professional degree. It's a new world, and they're having a very hard time getting started, mainly because almost every job listing that I see says 3 to 5 years experience. Well, if you did your job as a student and studied really hard and graduated, you didn't have time to have a full-time job while you were doing that. So where did you get that work experience? And basically not everybody accepts the fact that, you should get an internship, or it would be great to have some kind of work-based learning experience. It just doesn't exist in every corner of the United States yet. Maybe we'll correct that soon. And then when I say the bookends, older workers are having a really hard time. And by older, I mean like 50 and older. Somebody who gets laid off at 50 and was in middle management is having a really tough time finding a job that pays the same or has a similar job title. They don't want to go back and start over again. They earned their position in that with that old employer, and they want to find a position that's at least as good in terms of both salary and status. So I think there's a little bit of discrimination on both ends when we have the AI technology that sorts resumes they throw somebody out that could be a great, highly qualified candidate because they don't have that 3 years work experience. And quite frankly, with an older worker, they see that they've been around a long time and they think, that's not a good candidate because they're going to come with preset views and maybe too high a salary demand.
Yeah, that really is something that's just such a large portion of the workforce when you're taking off the new workers and you're taking
Yeah.
off just older than as young as 50. That really is such a small portion of the workforce you're working with when you do that.
That's right. And
Really
50 sounds younger every day.
well.
You know what I mean? When you're looking at people just getting started, in their mid-20s, they could live to be, please God, they could live to be 80 or 90. They're going to work a lot longer than 62, a lot longer than their grandparents or parents worked.
Yeah, that really. Yeah. On another note, as you know here at Idea Jim, we're all about the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and I know you've been here before. You're familiar with those. Do you think that which of those would you think are the most pressing issue that needs to be addressed in conjunction to what you do?
So I'm going to answer your question, but first I'm going to give you a real pat on the back. I think IdeaGen's commitment to beating the drum about the sustainability goals is so important. I mean, too often people make laudatory goals and aspirations and then don't think about them again. But IdeaGen's not letting anybody forget about that. So congratulations, Will, to you and George and the whole team on that. Now, I have to say, you should know, since I said I was a policy wonk, I think for me, 1, 4, and 8 are braided together in a way where they can't be separated. 1 is no poverty, and who can disagree with that? But poverty without a good education, which is goal 4, and without a decent job and economic development is almost impossible. There's no country on this planet that can afford to pay people enough to be out of poverty. They have to, and by the way, I think part of human nature is wanting to find meaning, and work for many people is a significant part of their meaning in life, their status in their community, their feeling of giving back. So I'm not sure even if a country could afford to pay people to stay home and live above the poverty line. I don't think I'd be an advocate for it. So I would say braiding those 3 goals, absolutely not accepting poverty anymore in the world, and then doubling down to say we're going to do that by making sure everybody has a quality education and everybody has a pathway to a decent job and every community has a strong kind of spirit of economic development and the tools they need to make that a reality.
Wow, that really was a great answer.
Well,
Um,
at least I didn't say all 17, right? We'd be here until tomorrow.
yeah. So, as you noted, and the thing about your past is that you work both in the public and in the private sectors. A big thing that we're here at IdeaGen that we're big about is cooperation. What does a synchronous relationship between government and the private industry look like to you in order to maximize employability?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it has to be more than money. I'm not letting either the private sector or the government off the hook for funding innovative ideas. But there has to be a commitment to figure out your roles and responsibilities, not just for the beginnings of a cooperative agreement or a partnership, but what's it going to look like moving out? So I think strong communication, really well established end goals, and then also some agreement on the pathway to achieve those goals. I think that's really critical. I think in some areas, the local government, the state government, and of course the federal government do a really good job of putting forward RFPs, requests for proposals, but they really don't talk about what happens after we fund you. How do we support you in terms of our policies? How do we support you in terms of our bully pulpit? How do we support you just in terms of our messaging day to day, you as a grantee, you as a partner? And then I would switch over to business. Look, I think the one positive thing about COVID is that business across the board has started to look at talent differently. Uh, I don't know of any small, medium, or large business who hasn't experienced a talent shortfall since the beginning of the pandemic. And this, instead of creating a war on talent, just where people are poaching, which is always going to happen to some degree, so many businesses are settling in on how do we really attract and then develop the right kind of worker for the job that they entered the business to perform, but also stick with them as an incumbent worker and give them new skills so that they can move up in the company. I'm really excited about that. And I think government does a small part in supporting that with the tax deduction that they give employers to do training, to provide education as a benefit for their employees. But that $5,250 hasn't been increased in 25 years. And the cost of education has almost doubled in those 25 years. So, I mean, I think it's time to look at tax policy and say, how do we better incent employers to give their employees the educational benefit that they deserve?
And so, in that, you mentioned the pandemic, and that's something that's still at the forefront of our minds, no matter how much we try to forget it. Obviously, it was very detrimental to employment in this country, as it was around the world. But do you think that the employment's starting to get back to where we were? So we're seeing a rise in employment rates, and if so, what strategies and have businesses adopted in order to revitalize the workforce?
So literally every sector is at or above their pre-pandemic numbers in terms of jobs, except leisure and hospitality. We're still seeing a significant decrease in the jobs today when we compare them to February of 2020 in travel and transportation. Some in leisure and we see things happening all the time. I mean, hopefully this summer we'll see the cruise industry come back with some vibrancy. We're starting to see hotels reopen, but clearly there have been some hotels that didn't make it through the pandemic, and we need to make sure that it's 930,000 workers fewer today in that industry than we had in February of 2020. That industry being leisure and hospitality. What are we going to do with those workers? There needs to be jobs for them. If the industry is not going to come back, if, for instance, they've automated some positions out of existence, if they've decided to contract on the number of employees, we need to figure out where else we can place those people. The thing that it's great to celebrate a low unemployment number, and I hate to rain on that parade for anybody, but the reality is our labor market participation rate is over a percentage point lower than it was in February of 2020. That means a million people are sitting on the sidelines, not jumping back into the economy. We just cannot rebuild. We can't, talk about reshoring manufacturing jobs if we're not going to get the labor force that we need. We can't talk about growing tech jobs if we can't get that labor force. And we certainly can't provide the kind of quality health care that every American deserves if we don't have the labor force to participate and, fill those jobs. So we still have a lot of work to do.
Certainly, we do. Going back to education, education is obviously the foundation that our workforce is built on. Is there any changes you think that we need to make to the American education system specifically to ensure quality education for our workforce?
I think embedding more work-based learning into education at every level would be a great first start. It is not easy at all, but it can start simply by giving kids, even in K-12, relevant work to do in academic classes. So instead of a kid saying, why do I have to take algebra? Having those algebra teachers and other math teachers really look at real world situations where an individual needs the quantitative reasoning and, quite simply, the math skills to solve a problem in the real world. Then I think, you could go out. You talked before, Will, about, the cooperating across public and private sectors. Businesses need to change the way they engage with education at all levels. They need to offer, wherever possible, the opportunity for both teachers and faculty in post-secondary and students to go on the work site and see firsthand how you work. What does working in a team mean in different work environments? What does it mean to really solve a problem on the work site? We talk a lot about that, but the average student never gets a chance to really experience that. And quite frankly, the average teacher doesn't know it either. They know how to solve problems at the school or at the campus, but they don't know what it's like to solve a problem in a warehouse. They don't know what it's like to solve a problem in a bank. They certainly don't know what it's like to solve a problem in a pharmaceutical company that's doing both regulatory and actual work making products. So I think it would be wonderful if no one graduated from 12th grade without some kind of relevant work experience, like job shadowing, like a business coming in and doing a competition. We have great competitions like Skills USA and career and technical education, but we have nothing for kids who aren't in CTE, that are just following an academic track. They never get to touch business. And yet the reality is, whether you're in career and technical education or pursuing that academic track, your end goal is getting a high quality job. And I don't know how people expect you to do that without experiencing something in the business world. And it shouldn't just be, great part-time or summer jobs, working in fast food or working in restaurant or retail. It should be getting your feet wet in the industry that you'd like to enter as a professional.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
The applicability of the curriculum is something that's really important for everyone to understand, but also the curriculum itself can make developments so that, like you said, businesses can come in and provide instruction to these students in K-12 so they
Yeah,
can better improve. They'll understand what they're doing, and when we do that, the workforce will be that much more effective.
that's right.
And all right, that's on a different note, a more personal note. Is there any stories of things that you've done at Working Nation, whatever the Working Nation and you yourself have done that you really think would be impactful for our viewers to know?
You know, I think the most exciting part of Working Nation is you get to know either a nonprofit or a for-profit and hear how they're figuring out how to solve a problem, how to do better from the onset. I think we've had so many examples of that, but I don't think anything has been as rewarding as working with people who are trying to really make a difference with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we get the opportunity to talk to so many companies for whom it's more than just, kind of a check off the box, who it's really changing the culture of their organization to really go from diversity, equity, and inclusion to really belonging. You think about when people talk about churn or they talk about problems with retention, they always talk about, particularly with workers your age, Will, that they're job hoppers, that they don't want to stick in a job, that they don't want to, they don't want to make a home anywhere. They want to stay 18 months and then they're on to their next adventure. I think I really appreciate companies who look at themselves in the mirror and say, wait a minute, am I a place where that younger worker, that mid level worker, that older worker wants to stay? Did I make them feel valued? Did I respect their opinion? Did I include them in things, not just in ice cream socials? I'm talking about decision making. Did I really look to them to gather their perspective and use their perspective where it was appropriate, in coming up with our company solution? that's been the best for me, looking at companies that really, and they're all over the place. I would point to Comcast, I would point to Snap-on Tools, I would point to Walmart, Amazon. I mean, they're all trying to figure this out. Some of them with very public kinds of conversations, and others with really intense internal conversations as well, to kind of hold themselves accountable. So I think it's a great day. I would call out the Opportunity at Work movement that's looking at stars. Those workers that didn't get necessarily a formal education, but have work history and have really acquired skills on the job. I mean, I think the bias against someone who doesn't have a paper diploma or a paper certificate, but can prove to you on the job every day that they have the skills and attitude and behaviors to get the job done well. I think those people are really overlooked, and I'm really proud of what Opportunity at Work is doing. And we've been so lucky to have great conversations with them about what they're doing and what they're going to continue to do into the future.
Wow, Jane, thank you so much. Just to further give you a chance, is there any more call to action you want to give to our viewers for what they can do to help further what you're promoting?
I think certainly I hope they follow us at Working Nation and give us their feedback. That would be great. And they should get engaged with IdeaGen, because IdeaGen is always doing things like this, trying to move the needle on progress and progress for all. But in your local community, really, if you're a business person, really get involved with education at whatever level you can. I mean, when I say holding a contest, and, it's really interesting. Yes, Skills USA is a national competition that takes state level winners and brings them to a national level. But I mean, think about the things that you need in your business. If digital skills are important for your business, think about having a competition with your local high school around business skills that are digital. How is your business moving in a digital way? Those kinds of things are both instructive for the students, but cool and fun, because it's a competition. And quite frankly, it's a great marketing tool for your business. So for those business people that are watching, get engaged with education, whether it's your local K-12, whether it's your local community college, or whether you're fortunate enough to have a four-year institution in your backyard. Get involved with them. Figure out how you can make education at any of those levels more relevant for your business sector.
Thank you so much, Jane. I just want to extend our thanks here from IdeaGen for all that you're doing to promote the SDGs and really, truly make the world a better place. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
Will, you're the best. It was so fun talking to you.
It's so great to have you on the show today.